Today we continue our series on the kings of Israel with the sad end of the wisest king, Solomon. A kingdom at its zenith. Let's set the stage. At its zenith, Solomon's reign was unparalleled in wisdom, wealth, and accomplishment. Most famously, he built the temple, completing a project begun by his father, King David. When the temple was finished, the cloud of the Lord's presence filled it. Since you have done this and strayed from my covenant, I will certainly tear the kingdom from you and will give it to your son, but not the throne of David. Your son will still be king, but I will not be favorable to him as I was to you. As for Solomon, he lived another 40 years, though we have no further details on his life. Some scholars say that his heart was broken by the civil war. Others say he lived his last 40 years in fear of Jeroboam, his illegitimate son. Maybe he felt that he brought this on himself. We don't know. However, we do know that his life closed out with regret and compromise. He had been obedient early in his life, then disobedient later, and now he was reaping the consequences. I will punish him severely with famine and wild animals, and will make his days a horror. He wrote the book of Proverbs and many other books. He amassed great wealth and planted God's kingdom in Israel like never before. But his story shows us that even the greatest can fall. He's known today as the wisest man, but sadly, his story doesn't end in wisdom. Instead, it ends in idolatry, defeat, and disappointment. Solomon was like Israel itself. In his youth, he chose to follow the Lord, but later in life, he chose paganism. And that choice brought him down, became the king of Israel. But he ended up ruling only over Judah. His son Rehoboam inherited a shattered kingdom. Solomon was like a five-star hotel that lost its stars. He was a leader who had it all, but lost it all. He was like an athlete who trains hard his whole life, peaks at the Olympics, but loses his gold medal. He was a king who once walked with God, but now walks in Egypt. You can see this by the lack of temple imagery in his last 40 years. In the first 40 years, Solomon's name was synonymous with the temple. But during his last 40 years, he's more associated with Egypt, with Jeroboam, and with the division of Israel. My words which you have not kept, I will hurl against you. Do you see that? God may have given Israel over to Jeroboam, but he never gave up on David's offspring. In other words, he's telling Solomon, you broke your agreement. Even the best can get worse. Even the brightest can grow dim. Even the strongest can fall. Sometimes it takes years to rise to the top, but only a moment to fall. The higher you climb, the farther you can fall. Remember, God looks at the motives of your heart. Don't try to cover up your wrong with a bunch of good works. Don't try to balance the scale. Sin is sin. Holiness is holiness. The Bible warns us to beware of compromise. Once you open the door to sin, you risk letting the flood in. Sometimes we allow sin to enter because we think it's harmless, or we tell ourselves we can handle it, or we convince ourselves we won't let it go too far. But the longer you entertain sin, the more it grows. It may start out as a low flame, but it can turn into a roaring fire. Sometimes we start going downhill because we want to feel normal. We're tired of pretending, so we throw our hands up in the air and say, "Who can I please?" And that's when we stop hearing from God. Our prayers aren't answered. Our efforts are ineffective. Our lives lose meaning. We feel empty and confused. We wonder, is there any hope for me? Can I be used by God again? Yes, you may have fallen, but God is in the business of raising people up. Don't stay down. Get back in the fight. Return to the Lord. Run to Him. He's waiting to forgive you, restore you, heal you, and use you. He wants to give you a second chance, but it starts with a change of heart. Turn from your sin, confess your sin, and trust in Jesus. Remember, He cleanses us from all unrighteousness. You left my commands, and now I have to judge you. I have to punish you. The Lord said He would take the kingdom from Solomon and give it to his son, but not to his line forever. One tribe, Judah, would remain for David's descendants. The rest of Israel, 10 tribes, would be removed from Solomon's line. And this was a sight to behold. It was like a fire blazing or a glowing furnace, and the temple was filled with the glory of the Lord. As it turns out, Solomon's son Rehoboam inherited a shattered realm. Verse 16 tells us that when Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard that Rehoboam had become king of Israel, he rose up against him and took the kingdom. And here's how it went. All Israel gathered to Rehoboam in Shechem, all the elders of Israel, all the tribe of Reuben, and all the tribe of Simeon, and all the tribe of Levi. And they presented themselves to the king there. And the king took his stand in Shechem, face to face with them. And it came to pass, when Rehoboam was come with all the men of Judah, they came to him out of Judah, each man with his sword in his hand, that he answered them, and said, What new thing is this that ye have done? And they said, My father made our yoke heavy, but thou hast made it much heavier. Whereas my father, what was heavy, he made light. But now with thee our oppression is doubled. So he let them go every man to his house. And the king dwelt in Jerusalem, and fled away from him. So Jeroboam established the northern kingdom of Israel. While Rehoboam ruled Judah in the south, Israel was split, so the priests could not stand to minister before the Lord there, because the glory of the Lord, the God of Israel, was there. So awesome was the sight that anyone who came even to look at it, men or animals, would run away screaming and never be seen again. Such was the power of the Shekinah glory. That was until Solomon died. For some reason, this glory is not mentioned in the book of Kings. We have no record of it appearing after Solomon's death. The turning point, foreign wives. But what caused such a great man to stray so badly? Well, let's find out. Solomon pleased God in the early stages of his reign. But later, he took many foreign wives, specifically pagan princesses. They had an effect on him. Their effect was bad. Verse 4 says they turned his heart toward idolatry, began to worship other gods. First, he gave them religious sanctuaries, built high places for the worship of Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Now, if you want to know how serious this was, hear me out. It was detestable to the Lord. He hated it. See, all of the gods of Canaan were called gods of the nations around Israel. Remember, Israel was surrounded by hostile people groups, and every nation has its own god. Thus, the surrounding nations used the land of Israel as a highway between them, and their gods were right there along with them. And these nations worshipped anything and everything, trees, stones, planets, whatever they thought was impressive. To them, it was a god. These were fertility gods, gods of nature, and sometimes they were associated with sexual immorality. This is why in Deuteronomy 7, Moses commanded the Israelites to destroy their idols, break them into pieces and burn them completely. Worshipping anything other than the true God was unacceptable. There were none so small that it wouldn't be despised by God, nor any so great that they would go unpunished for it. These nations were responsible for some of the most evil, vile things ever, like child sacrifice, which was an abomination to the Lord. He loved many foreign women and married 7 of them, besides the 700 wives and 300 concubines. Many of these women didn't just marry him, they also led him astray. How did they do this? Let's find out. Idolatry sneaks in. These women turned his heart. What does this mean? Well, they influenced him. God's grievance. So you can imagine how serious this is when the king begins to worship these gods. Here's God's reaction. The Lord spoke to Solomon, Rehoboam's rise. Verse 42 tells us that Solomon lived another 40 years. So how did this judgment unfold? How did this prophecy come about? Solomon's final years, legacy tarnished. We can't deny that Solomon was a great king, completed the temple, prophetic remnant. Yet despite all this, God preserved David's line through Judah alone, a prophetic remnant foreshadowing the Messiah's birth in a humbled kingdom. Lessons for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe.